Welcome to my podcast. I want to talk to you today about how childhood trauma comes into your intimate relationships. So, I really wanted to touch on this specifically for women who have PMDD because I honestly believe that your childhood trauma, your past trauma, whether it's past relationship trauma, any kind of trauma that you have tends to come up for you while you're in PMDD. I've literally noticed that I remember specifically my childhood trauma. Every single month when I'm in PMDD, I have these moments where I have flashbacks, intrusive thoughts about trauma that I've gone through in the past. And it's like I'm reliving it all over again. So, in my intimate relationship, the way that this really um, impacts my relationship is that any wounds, any bruises that I have, I tend to put on my significant other. So, I have childhood trauma from being in foster care at the age of 3, adopted by the age of 5, and then I had verbal and physical abuse up until I was 17 years old. So from the age of 5 years old, 3 to 5 years old, all the way up until 17 years old, I was being abused in a way, intermittently, so on and off throughout my childhood. And I remember thinking to myself, I just wanted a family that loved me. I, even when my adopted father, because I wouldn't so much say it was my mother, um, this is how I felt about my adopted mom. I just felt like she should have taken up for me. A lot of times when I was dealing with the trauma from my adopted dad, I just felt like she should have said something. She should have spoken up for me because she knew me. She was closest to me. And I felt like I just didn't deserve the harsh treatment that my dad was giving me. And looking back on it, I'm thinking with my adopted dad, he was very militant, very stern, had a lot of rules and very black and white. You have to earn your keep. That's how he made me feel growing up. And he reminded me constantly that I was adopted, reminded me constantly that I was essentially not his blood, that he was taking care of me. I remember growing up and being 5, 6 years old and feeling like the people that I considered my family were doing me a favor. And so when I ended up getting into relationships, I felt like I couldn't ask for anything because it was just a privilege to have someone. And that's how I think it translated into my relationships, that I felt like I wasn't worthy of asking for what I truly wanted, because my dad used to always say, you should just be grateful that we took you in. You should be grateful that we're taking care of you. And early on in my relationships, that's how I felt. I should be grateful that I just had someone. And so I didn't accept what I deserved. I accept what the person gave me. And if I wanted something more, I kind of sheltered that. I kind of went down on that and it was like, no, 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 like you just need to be happy that you have what you have because it's better than nothing. And let me tell you, when you have that mentality of it's better to have somebody than it's better to not have anybody, I truly believe that the other person can sense that. When they sense that your expectations are so low, they meet you at those expectations. So if they were going to do more for you, it's almost like they don't, because they feel like, why would I do more when she's so grateful for the bare minimum? And that's how I was. I was so grateful for the bare minimum for so long in my relationships because my self-worth was tied to, you need to earn your keep. You need to do things in order to earn my love and earn my acceptance and earn all these things. It was never a sense of unconditional love. And so, fast forward to where I had to do the work to heal my childhood trauma. It put me in such a place to where I looked back and I was so disappointed in myself at what I had accepted, because once I healed the trauma, I recognized how much less I was accepting and how my childhood trauma had literally shaped my expectations or lack thereof in relationships. And I had allowed myself to stay in situations way longer than I knew that I should have, because I felt like that was the only way I was going to get the acceptance. So, the way it was growing up with my adopted dad was that I worked hard, but I never gained his acceptance. And so, my mission in life was always to do things to gain the acceptance of others, because I never was able to get that from my dad. And as bad as I felt that he treated me, I genuinely just wanted his acceptance. I wanted his love. I didn't care that he treated me bad. I didn't care that it was verbal abuse, physical abuse. I didn't care about any of that. All I wanted was for him to say that I did a good job, for him to say that he was proud of me. And up until when he passed in 2015, I still don't feel like I had that. And I remember in 2015, I was actually in a relationship with a man that was deceiving me, and in the back of my mind, I knew it. And it was, a situation where you see the red flags come up, but you don't want to believe them. You don't want to think that it's true. And because of that childhood trauma of still trying to gain that acceptance, I said, it's okay. I can ignore the red flags and maybe they'll go away. I can accept what he's giving me, and maybe one day he'll just magically decide to treat me how I know that I deserve to be treated. So I was never in a situation where I thought that what I was receiving was what I was deserved. I knew that I deserved more, but I also wasn't in a position to demand it or expect it from the other person. It's kind of like I was willing to just live that life of accepting less than I deserved, and I felt like that was just in the cards for me. I remember a time where I was, in my 20s or maybe early 30s, so not that long ago, where my biological mom was like, I don't owe you anything. And I remember thinking, what does that even mean? Like, when she said that she didn't owe me anything, it was almost as if I wasn't worth her owing me anything, because I look at the relationship that I have with my daughter and I feel like I owe her everything. I feel like she deserves the world. I feel that way about her because of how I view her. I have such a high regard for my daughter that I know that I owe her everything. I brought her into this world, and I'm committed to giving her everything that I can and teaching her everything that I can. So for someone who brought you into this world to tell you that they don't owe you anything, it's almost like that's how they view you. And I remember being so hurt by that, that we were going back and forth, and then when she screamed that at me, I remember just breaking down. And I was at my grandfather's house, and I put the phone on speakerphone because everyone used to always think that I was being so dramatic when I talked about how my biological mom talked to me. And I used to be like, no, it's really bad. Like, it's really bad. And And I put it on speakerphone because I was over their house, and I let them hear her scream that at me, and she screamed other things at me, but they kind of looked a little bit shocked, like, oh, like this is really a thing. And to grow up with childhood trauma from, I had it from my biological mom and my biological dad, and then also my adopted mom and my adopted dad. So I had four generations, four separate generations of individuals that made me feel like I wasn't worth unconditional love. So going into a intimate relationship, I always struggled with having all of this love, wanting to be loved, and then the person not reciprocating it, and I just accept what they gave me. Once I healed from my childhood trauma, my level of expectations for what I was willing to accept in my life, it got bigger, and I didn't feel bad about it. And it took a long time. I remember it took a very long time. And it took time for me being single to validate my worth myself, to know what I was worth myself without the acceptance or approval of anyone else. And once I got that and I did the work, which is why I say that it is not a simple process of just making a decision and then that's it. You have to do the work. So if you're at a place in your intimate relationship where you're like, you know what, this is how I feel, I really need to do the work to validate what I know that I'm worth, then you need to book a session with me at pmddrelationshipcoach.com, where we can really go into your past trauma and find out what that missing link is. Heal that part of you that's making you believe that you're not worth more than you're accepting. And so this is not a call for you to go back to your significant other and start demanding certain things, because what I did with my husband was I don't demand anything of him. I have a level of expectation. He's very clear on what it is that I need, because I'm very communicative about, I vocalize what it is that I need. I don't make him guess. And so it's not a demand. It's more of, if you're saying that you love me, you want to make me happy, all of these things, I'm going to communicate to you, this is what I need. And I'm also in a position to give it to myself. So I've never been in that position before. I would say fully in any other relationships, to where if my partner didn't give me something, that I would be able to give it to myself. But I am in that position right now where if my partner decided, which he never would because he's amazing and he's an overgiver. He's a level of excellence kind of partner. So I never have to worry about him giving me less than I deserve. But I had to get to a point to where if I was not getting what I needed out of my relationship, I needed to be able to provide that to myself in order to maintain my sense of self-worth, and also to maintain my sanity. Because when I would be in an intimate relationship and I wasn't getting what it is that I needed, nothing in my world was right. Everything was turned upside down. Nothing seemed right. I couldn't celebrate other things that were going on in my life, my career, with my child, with my friends. Like, I couldn't fully be present to do those things if my relationship was in turmoil. I just always felt like there was something missing. Like, I needed my relationship to be in order for me to celebrate and to enjoy every other aspect of my life. And so I'm now at a point after doing the work to where If my partner's having an off day and he is not able to provide me what it is that I need, then I can provide it for myself and not be resentful about it and not be, oh, like you should do this and not demand it and sit there and wait. Because I feel like when there's a level of expectation with our partner where it's like, you need to provide me with this in order for me to be okay, that pressure is, it makes everything that they do not authentic, and then it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good for them to be doing something for you because you're demanding it and because they know that you need it. It feels better to have an awareness of what it is that your partner needs and you making a conscious decision as their partner that you're going to do what it is that they need, or you're going to provide them what it is that they need in an intimate relationship. And that is making it their personal choice and not an obligation. Because when people do things out of obligation, when they feel depleted, when they feel tired, when they feel all of these things and they don't feel like doing them and they do them anyway, there's a level of resentment that's tied behind that. It's like, I'm doing this, but I don't really feel like doing this. And so I always tell my partner that when he's tired, when he's depleted, when he's whatever, I'm okay with you not giving me certain things because I don't want you to give it to me out of a depleted mindset, out of a sense of scarcity and lack. Like, if you don't have it within you, I'm not requesting it from you. I'm not going to take from you what you already don't have. So, in my childhood trauma, from healing from that, I'm able to have realistic expectations for my partner and not expect them to fill the void. I used to do that. I really used to do that early on in my intimate relationships. I had obviously not a good relationship with the the female or the male, the mother or the father part of my parental upbringing, and I used to demand that my partner provide that for me because I had those voids. And I felt like being in a relationship meant that they were going to fill those voids. I felt like because I was in a relationship, I didn't have to deal with my childhood trauma anymore because I had someone that was going to be that father that I needed, that was going to be that mother that I needed. And not in the sense of like literal mother and father, but like all of the things that I was missing. So I essentially wanted someone to be caring and compassionate and nurturing like a mother, like I felt like my mother should have been. And then I also wanted someone that I could depend on, that made me feel secure, that was going to provide me with guidance and sound advice. Like, I was literally expecting my partner to be the both sides. And if they weren't that, then all of a sudden there was something wrong with them, that they didn't really love me because they weren't giving me what I needed, which was lacking from my childhood. And I never saw the connection that I was demanding things that I didn't get from my childhood until a partner, an ex-partner, told me, I can't give you what it is that you need. I don't know what it is that you need, but the pressure of feeling like I'm doing all these things and I'm not giving you what you need is too much. And they literally broke up with me because they felt like it was too much. Because here's the thing, when my exes used to give me a little bit of what I felt like I needed, I would automatically start to yearn for more, because it's kind of like, if you get, you give them an inch, they take a mile or whatever. I felt like, oh, so it is possible for them to provide that for me. Okay, now I need more and more and more and more and more. And my demands, consciously or subconsciously, were so high because I had not healed that childhood trauma. And I was literally expecting, every time the childhood trauma, the intrusive thoughts, the flashbacks from my childhood would come up, I would look to my partner for comfort, for healing. And it wasn't right to put that on them. It was for me to do the work before I even decided to get into another relationship. And that's when I met my now partner is when I took those 2 years of being single. And let me tell you, it wasn't single by choice. It was because my ex cheated on me for whatever reason. And I was devastated. And normally my pattern was I would be upset, be devastated because of a breakup, and then give it a little bit of time, and then I would be open to another relationship. Like I cannot remember a time in my adult life that I was single. My first boyfriend ever from high school, he used to call me the runaway bride because I was like that person that was always had a partner because I've always been a relationship person, a person that wanted to be in a relationship. And if it didn't work, I was like, okay, fine, I'll just, try again. Like I had that resilience that even if I had to go through frogs and bad situations, like I would pop back up because it meant that much to me to be able to find that person that could unconditionally love me so that I could unconditionally love them because I never got that. And I remember when I was in my healing process in those 2 years, I used to be ashamed to even admit that I want to unconditionally love someone because I was never given that. So it fulfills me so much as a mother to be able to do that for my daughter. Even Mother's Day is coming up, and everybody's always like, oh, like thinking that I'm supposed to get something. But every single year, I just feel like giving my daughter something or celebrating my daughter because I'm so grateful to be a mother because being able to unconditionally love someone is the greatest gift for me. So, translating that into an intimate relationship, I used to be ashamed to say, hey, I want to be unconditionally loved. I, you know, I wasn't proud that I had that void. And I think it was borderline neediness. So I remember it being a bit too much. So when you have this lack and you have this void, this neediness, it's because you're trying to fill it with somebody else. And so I can feel when someone's being needy, friendship partner or whatever, because it's an emotional pull. They're like needing this level of reassurance, this level of conviction, all of these things. And so it's not just that they're wanting some kind of normal reassurance. It's this I need you to reaffirm me because I'm lacking something myself. And so that's what I used to project onto my partners. It wasn't like, hey, just tell me you love me. It was like, I need you to constantly reaffirm that you love me because I'm so scared of losing it, and that's a different type of obligatory when you're requiring that your partner affirms you that way, it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel as good as if you're just saying it. And then if they say something back, then it's good. But if they don't, like you're still okay. And I feel like when I got to the point where I was able to tell my feelings to my partner and not expect anything in return, that's when I got to the point where I knew that I was healed from my childhood trauma. Now, when I say healed, I don't mean that it never comes up because I do believe that my PMDD brings up my childhood trauma every single month. Like it shows up like clockwork in some form. A lot of mine, unfortunately, is in nightmares. I have nightmares about I had one, to be completely honest, I had one last night, and it's always about my adopted dad. I haven't shared this. I haven't even shared this with my partner because we just didn't talk about it today, but I literally had a dream last night, a nightmare. I always call it a nightmare because it's very traumatic for me. Um, that, and I'm gonna try to get through this without crying, but I'm probably gonna cry. But my adopted dad had kind of started to say that, he was proud of me and all of these things. And then he took out some money and he gave me some money. And I took that as a sign of I had done a good job. And so I leaned my head on his shoulder and I felt this enormous sense of relief like, ah, he accepts me. I did a good job. And then he told me, he looked at me and told me he wanted me to have a child and he wanted the child to have black hair. And I know that may seem a little bit weird, but it made sense in that when he gave me the money, that was a form of, that was his way. He was a very, if he was sorry about something or if he wanted to show that he loved you or cared about you, he was a very acts of service, like he'll do something for you. So when he had given me that money, I took it as a sign of, oh, he loves me. I did a good job. But the catch was the request behind the condition behind it. I'm giving you this, and if you want to keep this feeling of I love you, you need to be able to have a child with dark hair. Specific, not like, so he said that he wanted me to have a child in the dream, and then I kind of paused, like, okay. And then he specifically said with dark hair. And I was like, okay. So now it's the pressure of, well, I can have a child, but I mean, me and my husband now are interracial couple, and we like, I don't know if he's gonna have dark hair or she's gonna have dark hair, but it was just that childhood trauma that was coming back up because the conditional love, that mindset is still there. And that's why I always say that, you know, what you do to a child in their childhood will carry on for the rest of their lives. And I'm so conscious, so self aware of not appearing to be the perfect mom in my daughter's eyes, but being conscious of my energy, being conscious of my actions, because I know that any given moment I could do something and she could still be talking about it when she's 30, 40, 50 years old because it's damaged her, because childhood is such a fragile time frame in a person's, it shapes a person. And people who are my clients or in therapy or coaching, counseling, all of these things, they're constantly being plagued by comments that their parents nonchalantly said, or ideas or mindsets that their parents nonchalantly put into their mindset to where they're haunted by them now. And their parents were so negligent and just did it consciously or subconsciously so freely that they're like, oh, it's no big deal. I'm just going to say and do these things. But the child carried it on into adulthood, projected it onto their relationships, and now nothing is right in their life. Because when your intimate relationship is not right, I don't care how much success that you have in any other area of your life, if you don't have things right with your intimate relationship, everything else is going to suck. And that's being completely honest. I have been there to where I've been on the top in my career, on the top with parenting, on the top with my finances, on the top with all these things. But none of that mattered because I was going through hell in my intimate relationship, and it it made my life devastating. It's like I couldn't celebrate anything else that I had going on until I fixed what was going on in my relationship. I didn't show up as a good friend. I didn't show up as a good sister. I didn't show up as a good, coworker because I was so enamored by the turmoil that was going on in my relationship. So I want to let you know that if you're at a place in your relationship right now where you have things that you know that you need to work on, if you have past trauma from your childhood that you know that you need to heal, it is time for you to do the work. Don't do what I did, which was spend years and years with people in relationships where I didn't heal my trauma and I projected that onto my relationship, and those relationships failed. They didn't. I'm not saying that all those relationships wouldn't have already failed, but I know specifically that my childhood trauma and not healing from what it is that I went through, it's almost like I started off with setting my relationship up for failure. Because if you have certain things that you haven't healed from in the past and you try to build on that, it's like building on such a rocky foundation. It's like, how do you expect this house to be built on a rocky foundation? Like, you're setting it up for failure. And if you're in that place where you've done that, it is not beyond repair. So I really believe that if I would have gotten help while I was in those relationships, I could have healed my childhood trauma and moved on with a fresh slate and not continue the pattern. So that's what I want to help you with. Um, is not continuing that pattern of carrying your childhood trauma into relationship after relationship and demanding things from your partner that they can't give you. So I want to let you know specifically, your intimate relationship partner cannot heal your childhood trauma or your past trauma for you. You have to be the one to do the work. And if you're expecting them to do it, if you're expecting them to show up as your 50% and you want them to be the other 50%, you're wrong. It's not going to work. You have to show up as 100% of who you are, and you can only do that by healing the broken parts of you so that you can show up whole in your intimate relationship. And if you know that that's something that you need to do, or if that's something that your partner needs to do, then you need to go ahead and book a session with me. Start coaching with me so that we can get you to a point where you're healing your past trauma and you're moving forward with your intimate relationship with a clean slate. You owe it to yourself in your intimate relationship to give it a good start. Give it a good fresh start. So many times we show up and we just say, "Oh, I'm showing up as I am, broken, bruised, confused, all of the things," and we expect it to work. And it's kind of like, if you had a car that was broke down, you wouldn't be like, "Hey, I'm gonna take this on the road trip of a lifetime and my vehicle is beat up." You wouldn't feel that confident about taking a broke down, beat up car for miles and miles and miles because you know that it's not gonna last. That's the same thing with your relationship. Don't try to take a broken relationship and say you want to get it in for the long haul. It's not going to last. It's going to break off piece by piece. You're going to be having unnecessary issues in your relationship, and it's all going to be directed to you not healing or your partner not healing from your past trauma. So if you know that you need help, then go ahead and message me at www.pmddrelationshipcoach.com so that we can start doing the work and you can have the relationship that you desire and deserve. So I look forward to working with you. Until the next episode, I will talk to you later. Love you.